Alternative formats for this presentation can be found on the Financial Services website. Internal audit, maintaining a strong control environment. Part 1, the control environment at Queen's. The agenda, definition and purposes of internal control, the control environment at Queen's, control processes and consequences of poor control. According to the Institute of Internal Auditors, or IIA for short, the definition of internal control is any action taken by management, the board, and other parties to manage risk and increase the likelihood that established objectives and goals will be achieved. The purposes of internal control. Internal control is a process to help us understand the risks we are exposed to, put controls in place to address risks, and effectively pursue our objectives, including effective and efficient processes, reliable financial reporting, and compliance with laws, regulations, and policies. Controls are a means by which the uses of our limited resources are directed, monitored, and measured. In other words, internal controls help by enabling us to make the things we want to happen, happen, and the things we don't want to happen, not happen. The following are examples of internal controls that you would use in your everyday life. You would lock your home and vehicle, review bills and credit card statements before paying them, and expect children to ask permission before they do certain things. Similar controls exist throughout the work environment. For example, sensitive information in offices are locked away each evening. Computer passwords are periodically changed and are not written down. P-card transactions are checked against source documents. And authorization is required for certain activities. Here is a more detailed example of an internal control in the work environment. We'll use the example of petty cash. We can say the objectives of petty cash internal controls are to maintain accurate petty cash floats, ensure sufficient cash is on hand, and control the risk of theft. In order to achieve this objective, controls have to be in place. For example, we would limit access to those needing it, give receipts and record transactions, assign responsibilities, and lock the cash away when not in use. However, an internal control system or process, no matter how well designed and operated, can only provide reasonable, not absolute, assurance to management and the board regarding the achievement of objectives. In other words, internal controls can only be effective if they are followed and operated correctly by the people responsible for their operation. The likelihood of achievement of objectives is affected by limitations in internal control processes. For example, there is often human error in the operation of processes. Controls can be circumvented by the collusion of two or more people, or even management might have the ability to override the system. One approach auditors can use to assess the strength of internal control processes is based around the acronym SOAP-SPAM. This focuses our attention on all key aspects of a good internal control process, and by considering each of these in turn, it is possible to arrive at an assessment of how well the internal controls in place mitigate risk and help us achieve our objectives. The letters of SOAP-SPAM spell S for segregation of duties, O for organizational controls, A, authorization, P, physical controls, S, supervision, P, personnel and staffing controls, A, arithmetic and accounting, and M, managerial controls. On the next two slides, we will provide a definition of each of these elements of the SOAP-SPAM approach. We will then provide examples using a common business process. S, segregation of duties. The same person should not be solely involved in all aspects of a process from start to finish. O. Organizational. Policies are in place that are up to date, clear, and effective. A. Authorization. Activities and actions are pre-authorized by the right people at the right time. Physical controls. Threats to the physical security of people and assets are controlled. S. Supervision. Appropriate supervision is in place to keep track of tasks. Personnel controls. Staff are appropriately supported with training and recruitment exercises ensure that the right people are employed. Arithmetic and accounting. Checks are made on accounting records and additions calculations are correct. And finally, managerial. The organization has clear lines of reporting and authority, targets, budgets, and expectations. So here is a worked example of how the SOAP/SPAN model can be used to assess where control should exist within the common business process of a procurement or P-card. For S, segregation of duties, there should be a segregation between payment and review and approval of a reconciliation. Organizational controls, clear and accessible, policy applies to all. Authorization, P-card transactions, claims and statements are authorized. Physical controls, these include where the card is kept and to make sure that it is kept secure when not in use. Supervision controls mean that P-card transactions are reviewed by a supervisor and that the P-card holder is required to report to a supervisor. Personnel controls would include that training and support is provided to staff where needed. Arithmetic or accounting controls are checks and balances to exist that make sure balances are accurate and reconciled. And finally, a managerial control for P-card includes the reporting lines, accountabilities, and that authority is clearly defined in terms of who can use the card and in terms of roles and responsibilities relating to proper card use. While we have shown what an ideal control environment would look like, occasionally controls are missing or ineffective. For example, where there is a lack of clear policy, a change in staffing or systems, or a lack of resources. It's important to remember that controls are there to help us in our day-to-day work. They help us avoid mistakes and rework. They help us save time and work efficiently. They help us work with confidence, clarity, and consistency, and provide a means to direct our activities and tasks. Controls help the university achieve its objectives, provide effective reports on how we are doing, stay compliant with policies and regulations, and use its limited resources in the most efficient, economic, and effective manner. Failure to recognize and control risks might ultimately result in reputational damage, financial losses, legal action, inefficient processes, and even poor morale or loss of staff. For example, improper hiring practices might result in negative press interest, or failure to adhere to funding agency requirements might mean a loss of research funds. How may we help you today? If you have questions, give us a call at 613-533-6095 or go to our website. We are located in F300 Mackintosh Corey Hall. Hours of operation are Monday to Friday from 8:30 to 4:30. This concludes our tutorial. To learn more or to review additional training resources and video tutorials, visit the Financial Services training page.